Charles Scott wiped the grease from his hands and looked at clock, 2:47 a.m. His back ached. His fingers were raw, and the luxury SUV sitting in his garage still had another hour of work left. But he couldn't stop now. The surgeon who owned this car was paying triple his normal rate for the overnight rush, and that money was the only thing standing between him and losing his shop. His landlord had already taped the final eviction notice to his door yesterday. Charles glanced at the photo of his daughter Mia taped inside his toolbox, her gap-toothed smile reminding him why he was still awake, still fighting, still fixing other people's problems when his own life was falling apart. Before we continue, please tell us where in the world you're watching from. We love seeing how far our stories travel, and it proves that powerful stories resonate everywhere. Charles had never worked on a car this expensive before. The black Range Rover belonged to Dr. Jennifer Hogan, the thoracic surgeon everyone in town knew by reputation. People said she could repair a human heart with her eyes closed, that she never smiled, and that she treated her patients like broken machines that needed fixing. Charles didn't care about any of that. He cared about the $2,400 she was paying him to rebuild her engine overnight. The engine trouble had been serious. A cracked cylinder head, damaged pistons, and a timing chain that had snapped like a guitar string. It was a kind of repair that normally took 3 days, but Dr. Hogan needed her vehicle by 7 a.m. for some medical conference 2 hours away. She had called every shop in the county before finding Charles, and when he quoted her the rush fee, she didn't even hesitate. "I'll pay it," she had said in a voice that sounded like it was reading a grocery list. "Just have it ready." By 3 a.m., Charles had the engine mostly reassembled. His lower back screamed every time he bent over the engine bay, and his knuckles were bleeding from where he'd scraped them against a bolt. But the work was almost done. He just needed to replace the cabin air filter, and that meant clearing out the glove box. Charles opened the passenger door and popped the glove box open. Inside was the usual mess: insurance papers, a registration card, some old receipts, and a small bottle of hand sanitizer. He pulled everything out and set it on the passenger seat. That's when he saw it. A piece of paper, folded many times until it was small and tight, had fallen from behind the glove box liner. It looked old, the edges yellowed and soft. Charles picked it up, and without thinking, he unfolded it. It was a letter, handwritten in blue ink that had faded in some spots. The handwriting was neat, careful, almost beautiful. Charles knew he shouldn't read it, but his eyes had already found the first line. "I wonder sometimes what it would feel like to be someone's first thought in the morning instead of their last appointment of the day." Charles stopped. He looked around the empty garage as if someone might be watching him. Then he kept reading. "I'm so tired of being the person everyone needs but nobody knows. At the hospital, they call me Dr. Hogan. In the operating room, I'm the best hands in the state. But when I go home, I'm just a woman who eats takeout alone and falls asleep to the sound of television because the silence is too heavy. I want someone to see me, not the surgeon, not the degree, just me. I want to laugh at something stupid. I want to burn dinner and not care. I want to wake up next to someone who knows that underneath all of this control, I'm terrified that I'm going to die having saved 1,000 lives but never really lived one of my own." The letter continued for another paragraph, but Charles couldn't keep reading. His throat felt tight. He folded the paper back up carefully, exactly the way it had been, and held it in his oil-stained hands. This letter had been written by Dr. Jennifer Hogan, the ice-cold surgeon, the woman who spoke in that flat, emotionless voice. And she had written these words, these desperate, lonely, human words, and then never sent them. She had folded this letter up and hidden it in her car, probably years ago, and forgotten about it. Charles felt like he had just opened someone's diary. He felt ashamed, but he also felt something else, a recognition, because he understood what those words meant. He understood what it felt like to be needed but not known, to be strong for everyone else but empty inside. He put the letter on the passenger seat with the other items from a glove box. Then he installed the new cabin filter, closed everything up, and finished the engine work. By 6:30 a.m., the Range Rover was purring like new. Charles had tested it, checked all the fluids, and even run it through a diagnostic scan. Everything was perfect. He sat on his rolling stool, exhausted, waiting for Dr. Hogan to arrive. She showed up at 6:50 a.m., 10 minutes early. Charles heard her heels clicking on the concrete floor of the garage before he saw her. When she stepped into the light, he was surprised by how small she looked. He had expected someone taller, more imposing. But Dr. Jennifer Hogan was maybe 5'5", with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun, and a red blazer that looked like it cost more than his truck. Her face was beautiful but closed off, like a door that had been locked for years. "Mr. Scott?" she said. "That's me." Charles stood up and wiped his hands on a rag, even though they were already as clean as they were going to get. "Your car's ready. Engines rebuilt, timing chains new, and I replaced your cabin filter while I was at it." "Thank you," she said. Her eyes moved over the Range Rover like she was inspecting it. "How much do I owe you?" $2,400, like we talked about. She reached into her purse and pulled out a checkbook. Actual paper checks, not a credit card. Charles watched as she wrote out the amount in perfect handwriting. The same handwriting from the letter. That's when Charles remembered. The letter was still sitting on the passenger seat, with the rest of the glove box contents. Dr. Hogan," Charles said, "when I was replacing the cabin filter, I had to empty your glove box. Everything's on the front seat. I didn't want to just shove it back in there." "That's fine," she said, not looking up from the check. Charles's heart started beating faster. Should he say something? Should he tell her about the letter? Should he pretend he never saw it? Dr. Hogan tore the check from the book and handed it to him. "Thank you again," she said, and started walking toward her car. Charles followed her. He didn't know why. His legs just moved. Dr. Hogan opened the passenger door and saw the pile of papers on the seat. She began gathering them quickly, stuffing them back into the glove box without really looking. Then her hand stopped. She had found the letter. Charles watched her face change. It was subtle. Just a tightening around her eyes, a slight pause in her breathing. But it was there. She picked up the folded letter and stared at it. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. The garage was silent except for the hum of the overhead lights and the distant sound of traffic outside. Finally, Dr. Hogan turned to look at Charles. Her face was completely neutral, but her voice was different, quieter. "Did you read this?" Charles could have lied. He could have said no. But something about the way she was looking at him made lying impossible. "Yes," he said. "I'm sorry. It fell out when I was cleaning the glove box, and I shouldn't have read it. I'm really sorry." Dr. Hogan nodded slowly. She looked down at the letter in her hands. "I wrote this 6 years ago," she said. "I had just finished a 20-hour surgery. A 12-year-old boy with a hole in his heart. We saved him. But I went home that night and realized I had no one to tell. No one who would understand what it felt like. So I wrote this letter to no one. Or maybe to someone I imagined existed." Charles didn't know what to say. He just stood there, feeling the weight of her words. "Can I ask you something, Mr. Scott?" Dr. Hogan said. "Charles," he said. "You can call me Charles." "Can I ask you something, Charles?" She looked at him directly now, and for the first time, he saw past the professional mask. He saw the person underneath. "Would you have written it? If you were me, if you felt like this, would you have written a letter like this?" Charles thought about the question. He thought about his own life, about his wife, Sarah, who had died in a car accident 4 years ago, about how he had spent every day since then just trying to survive, to take care of Mia, to keep his head above water, about how he hadn't let himself feel anything real because feeling meant hurting, and he couldn't afford to hurt when he had a daughter depending on him. "Yeah," Charles said quietly. "I think I would have. I think I did, in my own way, just never on paper." Dr. Hogan studied his face for a moment. Then she folded the letter and put it in her blazer pocket. "Thank you for the repair, Charles. The engine sounds perfect." "You're welcome." She started to get in the car, then stopped. "My front brakes have been squeaking a little. Not urgent. But could I bring the car back next week? Maybe Tuesday afternoon." Charles knew what squeaky brakes sounded like. He had driven this Range Rover around the block twice during his testing, and the brakes had been silent. But he also understood what Dr. Hogan was really asking. Tuesday afternoon works. he said. Around 4 p.m.? 4 p.m., she agreed. Then she smiled, just a small one, barely there, but real. See you then, Charles. She drove away, and Charles stood in his garage watching the sun come up over the buildings across the street. He still had grease under his fingernails and an ache in his back, but something felt different now. Something felt lighter. The following Tuesday, Dr. Jennifer Hogan showed up at 4 p.m. exactly. Charles had been watching the clock since 3:30, trying not to seem too eager. When the Range Rover pulled into the garage, he walked out to meet her, wiping his hands on his work shirt. Right on time, Charles said. I'm always on time, Jennifer said, stepping out of the car. She was wearing dark jeans and a white blouse today, not the formal blazer from before. She looked more relaxed, almost normal. Let me take a look at those brakes, Charles said. He drove the Range Rover up onto the lift and raised it into the air. Jennifer stood nearby, watching him work. Charles could feel her eyes on him as he removed the front wheels and inspected the brake pads and rotors. Everything looks good, Charles said after a few minutes. Pads have plenty of life left. Rotors are smooth, no squeaking that I can hear. Oh, Jennifer said. She sounded almost disappointed. Maybe I imagined it. Could be, Charles said. He lowered the car back down and wiped his hands. Or maybe it was just some dust in there. Sometimes they'll make a noise for a day or two and then go away. Jennifer nodded. She looked around the garage, at the tools hanging on the walls, the oil-stained floor, the old radio playing classic rock in the corner. How long have you owned this place? She asked. About 8 years, Charles said. Bought it with my wife. She kept the books, handled the customers. I did the repairs. We were a good team. Charles felt a familiar tightness in his chest that always came when he talked about Sarah. She died 4 years ago. Car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light. Jennifer's face softened. I'm sorry. Thank you. Charles grabbed a rag and started cleaning his tools just to have something to do with his hands. After she died, I tried to keep the business going, but I'm not good at the customer service part. And I've got a daughter, Mia. She's 10. So between taking care of her and trying to fix cars, I'm always behind on something. That must be hard, Jennifer said. It is, Charles admitted, but Mia makes it worth it. She's the only thing that makes sense anymore. Jennifer was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I've never had that. Something that makes sense. Someone who needs me beyond what I can do for them professionally. Charles looked at her. That letter you wrote 6 years ago. Did things ever change? No, Jennifer said simply. If anything, they got worse. I became chief of thoracic surgery 3 years ago, which meant more responsibility, more hours, more patience, less time for anything resembling a life. She smiled sadly. I'm very good at fixing hearts, just not my own. Before Charles could respond, the side door of the garage burst open and Mia came running in. She was wearing her school backpack and had dirt on her knees. Dad, you'll never guess what happened at school today. She stopped when she saw Jennifer. Oh, sorry. I didn't know you had a customer. It's okay, sweetie, Charles said. This is Dr. Hogan. Dr. Hogan, this is my daughter, Mia. Hi, Mia said, suddenly shy. Hello, Mia, Jennifer said. Her voice changed when she spoke to Mia. It became warmer, gentler. What happened at school today? Mia looked at her dad, asking permission with her eyes. Charles nodded, and Mia's shyness evaporated. We're doing a science project about engines. Mia said excitedly. We have to build a model engine that actually works, and I told my teacher my dad could help me because he's the best mechanic in the whole world. And she said that was perfect, and Mia took a breath, and I'm going to win first place for sure. That sounds like a wonderful project, Jennifer said. What kind of engine are you building? A 4-cylinder combustion engine, Mia said proudly. I don't really know what that means yet, but Dad's going to teach me. Charles laughed. We're starting this weekend. I've got an old lawnmower engine we can take apart, and she can learn how all the pieces fit together. Can I watch? Jennifer asked. The question came out before she seemed to realize she was asking it. She looked surprised at herself. Charles was surprised too. But when he looked at Jennifer's face, he saw a genuine interest there, not politeness. Real curiosity. Sure, Charles said. If you want to spend a Saturday watching a mechanic teach a 10-year-old about combustion engines, you're more than welcome. I'd like that, Jennifer said. Mia beamed. Cool. Can you come at 10 a.m.? That's when Dad said we'd start. 10 a.m. works for me, Jennifer said. Awesome. Mia turned to her dad. I'm going to go do my homework. Nice meeting you, Dr. Hogan. Call me Jennifer, Jennifer said. Nice meeting you, Jennifer. Mia ran toward the back office where Charles had set up a small desk for her. After Mia left, Charles and Jennifer stood in the garage, both of them feeling the weight of what had just happened. Jennifer had just invited herself to spend Saturday with a mechanic and his daughter. Charles had just invited a famous surgeon into his personal life. I should go, Jennifer said, but she didn't move toward her car. Yeah, Charles said, but he didn't want her to leave. Jennifer finally walked to the Range Rover and opened the door. How much do I owe you for the brake inspection? Nothing, Charles said. That was a 5-minute job. Don't worry about it. Charles, I can't just... You can, Charles interrupted. Consider a thank you. For what? For being honest with me last week. About the letter. About your life. That meant something. Jennifer looked at him for a long moment. I'll see you Saturday, she said. Saturday, Charles agreed. She drove away, and Charles stood there smiling like an idiot. Then he went to check on Mia, who was sitting at her desk with her math homework spread out in front of her. Dad, Mia said, without looking up from her work. Yes, sweetie, I like Jennifer. She seems nice. She is nice, Charles said. Is she your friend? Charles thought about the question. Yeah, he said. I think maybe she is. Mia nodded, satisfied with that answer, and went back to her math problems. Saturday morning came quickly. Charles cleaned the garage on Friday night, which was something he almost never did. He moved all the junk off the main workbench, swept the floor, and even wiped down the windows. Mia noticed. Are you cleaning because Jennifer's coming over? Mia asked with a knowing smile. I'm cleaning because this place is a mess, Charles said. Uh-huh, Mia said, not believing him for a second. Jennifer arrived at 10 a.m. on the dot. She was wearing jeans and a plain t-shirt, and her hair was down instead of pulled back. She looked younger, more relaxed. She was carrying a cardboard tray with 3 coffee cups. I didn't know what Mia drinks, Jennifer said, so I got her a hot chocolate. Hope that's okay. That's perfect, Charles said. Thank you. Mia appeared from the office, and her eyes went wide when she saw the hot chocolate. For me? For you? Jennifer said, handing it to her. Thank you. Mia took the cup carefully and took a sip. This is so good. They spent the next 3 hours taking apart the old lawnmower engine. Charles showed Mia each piece, the piston, the cylinder, the crankshaft, the valves, and explained what they did. Mia listened with complete focus, asking questions, making Charles repeat things until she understood. Jennifer sat on a stool nearby, watching. She asked questions too, good questions, and Charles found himself explaining things to both of them. It felt natural, comfortable, like this was something they had been doing for years instead of the first time. At one point, Mia was struggling to remove a tight bolt. She was using a wrench, her small hand straining, her face red with effort. It won't budge. Mia said, frustrated. That's because you're fighting it, Charles said. You're trying to force it, but force isn't what you need. You need leverage and patience. What's leverage? Mia asked. It means using the tool smarter, not harder, Charles explained. He showed her how to position the wrench differently, how to use her body weight instead of just her arms. Now try. Mia tried again, and this time the bolt turned. Her face lit up with pride. I did it. You did it, Charles confirmed. Jennifer was smiling, watching them. Charles caught her eye and smiled back. What? Jennifer asked. Nothing, Charles said. You look happy. Jennifer thought about that. I think I am happy, she said, like it was a surprise. I can't remember the last time I spent a Saturday morning doing something like this. Something that wasn't work or errands or obligation. Well, you're welcome to come back anytime, Charles said. We got plenty of engines that need fixing. I might take you up on that, Jennifer said. They worked until noon, and then Charles ordered pizza for lunch. They ate sitting on the garage workbench with Mia between them, talking about school and engines and nothing important at all. It was the most normal, peaceful afternoon Charles had had in years. After lunch, Mia wanted to show Jennifer her room upstairs. Charles and Sarah had lived in the apartment above the garage, and after Sarah died, Charles had kept living there with Mia. It was small, just 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, and a kitchen, but it was home. Mia led Jennifer upstairs while Charles cleaned up the pizza boxes. When they came back down 20 minutes later, Mia was talking Jennifer's ear off about her favorite books and her music lessons and her best friend Emma, who lived 3 blocks away. Your daughter is wonderful, Jennifer said to Charles when Mia ran ahead to the garage. She's the best thing I ever made, Charles said. Better than any engine I've ever built. Jennifer smiled. Can I ask you something personal? Sure. How did you do it? After your wife died, how did you keep going? Keep being a good father? Keep showing up every day? Charles considered the question. I didn't have a choice, he said honestly. Mia needed me. And yeah, there were days I didn't want to get out of bed. Days I was so angry at the universe I wanted to scream. But then Mia would come into my room and ask me to make her breakfast, and I'd get up because she needed breakfast. And then she'd need help with her homework, and I'd help her. And then she'd need me to tuck her in at night, and I'd tuck her in. And somewhere in all that needing, I found a reason to keep going. Jennifer nodded slowly. I don't have anyone who needs me like that. Maybe you need someone who needs you, Charles said carefully. Not as a surgeon, as a person. Maybe, Jennifer said quietly. Before either of them could say more, Mia came running up. Jennifer, do you want to stay for dinner? Dad's making spaghetti. Charles looked at Jennifer. I mean, if you're free, it's nothing fancy. I'd love to, Jennifer said. That night, the 3 of them ate spaghetti at the small table in Charles's kitchen. Mia talked about her science project. Jennifer told stories about medical school. Charles mostly just listened and watched the 2 of them connect. After dinner, Jennifer helped wash the dishes while Mia got ready for bed. When Mia came out in her pajamas to say goodnight, she hugged Jennifer without hesitation. Thanks for helping with my project today, Mia said. Thank you for letting me be part of it, Jennifer said, hugging her back. After Mia went to bed, Charles walked Jennifer down to her car. It was dark now, and the streetlights cast long shadows across the parking lot. Thank you for today, Jennifer said. I haven't felt this normal in a very long time. Normal's underrated, Charles said with a smile. Jennifer opened her car door, but didn't get in. Charles, I want to be honest with you about something. Okay. I didn't really have squeaky brakes last Tuesday, Jennifer said. I made that up because I want to see you again. Charles laughed. I know. You know? I test drove your car. The brakes were fine. Jennifer looked embarrassed. Why didn't you say anything? Because I wanted to see you again, too, Charles said simply. They stood there in the dark parking lot, looking at each other, both of them realizing that something had shifted between them. Something real. Can I come back next Saturday? Jennifer asked. To help with the project? Yes, Charles said. Please. Okay, Jennifer said. She got in her car, then rolled down the window. Good night, Charles. Good night, Jennifer. He watched her drive away, and for the first time since Sarah died, Charles allowed himself to feel something he thought he'd never feel again. Hope. Listen, if you're still here, it means you're invested. You want to see what happens next. But here's the reality. Most people watch stories like this and scroll away without subscribing. They enjoy it, then vanish. If this story actually matters to you, if you genuinely care about how it ends, hit that subscribe button. It only takes a second. Otherwise, you'll probably forget this channel exists and miss all the other incredible stories I share. The next few weeks developed a rhythm. Jennifer came to garage twice a week. Once during the week for some invented car problem, and once on Saturday to help with Mia's science project. Charles started looking forward to her visits the way Mia looked forward to Christmas. Everything felt brighter when Jennifer was around. The science project engine was coming together beautifully. Mia had learned the name of every part, understood how combustion worked, and could explain the four-stroke cycle to anyone who would listen. Charles was proud of her, but more than that, he was grateful, because this project had given him something he didn't know he needed, a reason for Jennifer to keep coming back. It was a Wednesday afternoon, about 3 weeks after they first met, when everything changed. Charles was under a Honda Civic, replacing a transmission pan, when his phone rang. He slid out from under the car and looked at the screen. It was Jennifer. She never called during the day. "Hello, Charles." Jennifer's voice was shaking. "I need to ask you for a favor." Charles sat up immediately, wiping grease off his hands. "What's wrong?" "I'm at the hospital. There was an emergency surgery this morning. A teenager with a punctured lung from a car accident. We saved him, but—" Her voice cracked. "His mother was in the car too. She didn't make it, and I had to be the one to tell him. I had to stand there and watch the 16-year-old boy realize his mother is gone, and She stopped talking. Charles heard her breathing, heard her trying to hold it together. "I can't go home right now," Jennifer said quietly. "I can't sit in my apartment alone with this. Can I come to garage? I know it's the middle of the day and you're working, but I need somewhere to be that isn't here." "Of course," Charles said immediately. "Come over. I'll put coffee on." "Thank you," Jennifer whispered. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Charles cleaned up the garage as best he could in the time he had. He made a pot of coffee in the small break room, then waited outside, watching the street. Jennifer's Range Rover pulled up 18 minutes later. She got out of the car, still wearing her scrubs, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. Her eyes were red. Charles didn't say anything. He just walked over and opened his arms, and Jennifer stepped into them without hesitation. She pressed her face against his chest and finally let herself cry. Charles held her, one hand on her back, one hand in her hair, letting her break down in the safety of his garage. They stood like that for a long time. When Jennifer finally pulled back, she wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand. "I'm sorry," she said. "I shouldn't have." "Don't apologize," Charles said firmly. "You needed somewhere safe to fall apart. I'm glad you came here." They went inside and sat in the break room. Charles poured coffee and sat across from her at the small table. "I've been a surgeon for 12 years, Jennifer said, staring into her coffee cup. "I've lost patients before. It never gets easier, but you learn to compartmentalize. You have to, or you'd never be able to operate again. But today was different. That boy looked at me when I told him about his mother, and all I could see was Mia. I kept thinking, what if it was her? What if someone had to tell Mia that her father was gone? And I couldn't stop crying. I had to leave the room. I had to find an empty supply closet and completely fall apart for 10 minutes before I could go back and finish my shift." Charles reached across the table and took her hand. "You're human, Jennifer. That's not a weakness." "In my profession, it is," Jennifer said. "Surgeons can't afford to be human. We have to be perfect, cold, controlled. If we let ourselves feel everything our patients feel, we'd never survive." "But you can't survive without feeling anything either," Charles said. "That's what that letter was about, wasn't it? 6 years ago, you were already losing pieces of yourself. You were already becoming someone you didn't want to be." Jennifer looked at him with tears in her eyes. "Yes. So what changed?" Charles asked gently. "Nothing changed," Jennifer said. "That's the problem. I wrote that letter 6 years ago, and then I folded it up and shoved it in my glove box and went back to work. And I stayed at work for 6 years. Every day, every night, every weekend. Work was the only thing that made sense. The only thing I was good at. And now I'm 40 years old and the chief of surgery, and everyone respects me. But I come home to an empty apartment and eat takeout alone and fall asleep on my couch watching medical documentaries. Because I don't know how to be anything except Dr. Hogan." "But you do know how to be something else," Charles said. "I've seen you with Mia. I've seen you laugh at her jokes and help her with her project and listen to her talk about school. That's not Dr. Hogan. That's Jennifer. And she's pretty great." Jennifer smiled through her tears. "Being with you and Mia these past few weeks has been the happiest I've been in years. Maybe ever. But I don't know if I can keep doing this." "Keep doing what?" "This." Jennifer gestured between them. "Us. Whatever this is. Because I'm going to hurt you eventually, Charles. I'm going to get called in for an emergency surgery and miss something important. Or I'm going to be too exhausted to be good company. Or I'm going to choose the hospital over you, because that's what I've always done. That's who I am." Charles was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Do you remember what I told Mia about the bolt that wouldn't budge?" Jennifer looked confused. "What?" "I told her not to fight it with force. I told her to use leverage and patience. That's how you get something to move when it's stuck." "I don't understand." "You're stuck, Jennifer," Charles said. "You've been stuck for years. And you're trying to force your way out by making big, dramatic decisions about what you can and can't do. But maybe that's not what you need. Maybe you just need leverage and patience. Maybe you need to take it one day at a time and stop trying to solve everything all at once." "But what if I can't change?" Jennifer asked. "What if this is just who I am?" "Then that's okay," Charles said simply, "because I'm not asking you to change. I'm just asking you to try, to show up when you can, to be honest when you can't, to let me and Mia be part of your life, even if it's messy and complicated and imperfect." Jennifer stared at him. "Why would you want that? Why would you want someone who might not always be there?" "Because nobody's always there," Charles said. "Life doesn't work that way. I can't promise I'll always be there either. What if my shop goes under? What if I get sick? What if something happens to Mia? We can't control any of that. All we can control is whether we try, whether we show up for each other when it matters." Jennifer's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it and closed her eyes. "They need me back at the hospital." "Okay," Charles said. "I don't want to go." "I know." Jennifer stood up slowly. Charles walked her to her car. Before she got in, she turned and kissed him. It was brief, soft, tentative, like she was asking a question. Charles kissed her back, giving her the answer. "I'll try," Jennifer said when they pulled apart. "I can't promise I'll be good at this, but I'll try." "That's all I'm asking," Charles said. Jennifer drove away, and Charles stood in the parking lot, feeling like the world had tilted on its axis. Everything was different now. Scarier, but also more alive. That night, after Mia was asleep, Charles sat at his kitchen table with a piece of paper and a pen. He thought about Jennifer's letter, the one she had written 6 years ago and never sent. He thought about all the things he had never said to anyone since Sarah died. And then he started writing. 2 months passed. Charles and Jennifer figured out their rhythm, which was really just organized chaos. Some weeks Jennifer came over 3 times. Other weeks she didn't come at all because the hospital needed her. Charles learned not to take it personally. Mia learned that sometimes grown-ups had jobs that couldn't wait. Mia's science project was finished. She had presented at school and won second place, which she pretended to be disappointed about until Charles took her out for ice cream, and she forgot to be upset. The model engine sat on a shelf in the garage, a reminder of how everything had started. Jennifer had dinner with them most Wednesdays now. She had her own coffee mug in Charles's kitchen. She had left a sweater in the break room. Small things, but they mattered. There were hard moments, too. Jennifer missed Mia's music recital because of an emergency surgery. Charles had to cancel a date because Mia got sick with the flu. They argued once about how much time Jennifer spent at work, and Jennifer didn't speak to him for 3 days before showing up at the garage at midnight and apologizing while Charles was closing up. But they were trying, both of them, and that was enough. It was a Saturday morning in March when Charles decided it was time. Jennifer came over at 10 a.m. like usual. Mia was at Emma's house for the day, which Jennifer thought was a little suspicious, but Charles just smiled and told her to come to the garage. When Jennifer walked in, she stopped. Sitting in the middle of the garage, polished and gleaming, was a car. Not just any car, a fully restored 1967 Mustang convertible painted dark blue, with white racing stripes and chrome that shine like a mirror. Charles. Jennifer breathed. What is this? This, Charles said, walking over to stand beside her, is a 1967 Mustang Fastback. My dad and I were restoring it together before he died. I've been working on and off for years, but I never finished it because it hurt too much. Every time I looked at it, I just saw all the things my dad and I would never do together. It's beautiful, Jennifer said. It's yours, Charles said. Jennifer turned to stare at him. What? It's yours, Charles repeated. I finished it. For you. Charles, I can't accept this. This is... Let me explain, Charles interrupted gently. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Remember your letter? The one you wrote 6 years ago and never sent. Jennifer nodded, not trusting her voice. I wrote one too, Charles said. He handed her the paper. I've been working on it for 2 months. I wanted to get it right. Jennifer unfolded the letter with shaking hands. Charles had written it in his own handwriting, messy and rough, nothing like Jennifer's elegant script. She began to read. Dear Jennifer, I'm not good with words like you are. I'm better with engines and metal, and things I can fix with my hands. But I've been trying to figure out how to tell you what you mean to me, and I realize that maybe I don't need fancy words. Maybe I just need to be honest. You walked into my garage 2 months ago, and you were this untouchable surgeon with your expensive car and your polished life, and I thought we had nothing in common. But then I read your letter, and I realized we had everything in common. We're both lonely. We're both scared. We're both so tired of being strong all the time. These past 2 months with you have reminded me what it feels like to be more than just Mia's dad or the mechanic who's always behind on rent. You make me feel like Charles again. Just Charles. The guy who laughs at stupid jokes and burns dinner and wants to wake up next to someone who sees him for who he really is. I restored this car for you because I wanted to give you something that wasn't broken, something that was whole and beautiful and ready to go anywhere. I wanted you to have something that reminded you that you're not just a surgeon. You're Jennifer. And Jennifer deserves to have a life outside the operating room. She deserves to laugh and make mistakes and drive too fast with the top down. I love you. I don't know when it happened exactly. Maybe it was when you showed up at my garage in the middle of the day because you needed somewhere safe to cry. Maybe it was when you hugged me a good night, like she was your own daughter. Maybe it was all those Wednesday dinners when you sat at my kitchen table and looked happy. I'm not asking you to change your life. I'm not asking you to choose between your job and me. I'm just asking you to let me be part of your story. Let me be the person you come home to. Let me be your first thought in the morning, not your last appointment of the day. This car is ready whenever you are. Yours, Charles. Jennifer finished reading and looked up at Charles with tears streaming down her face. You love me? I love you, Charles confirmed. His own eyes were wet now, too. I know that's scary. I know we've only known each other a few months, but I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of protecting myself from getting hurt. I'd rather love you and risk everything than spend the rest of my life safe and alone. Jennifer folded the letter carefully and held it against her chest. Then she walked over to Charles and kissed him. Not tentative this time. Not asking a question. This kiss was an answer. When they pulled apart, Jennifer said, I love you too. I think I've loved you since that first day when you admitted you read my letter and didn't apologize for being human. So what do we do now? Charles asked. Now, Jennifer said, looking at the Mustang, you teach me how to drive this thing. Charles laughed. You don't know how to drive a manual transmission? I'm a surgeon, not a race car driver, Jennifer said with a smile. They spent the next hour in the garage with Charles teaching Jennifer how to work the clutch, how to shift gears, how to feel the car responding to her. She stalled it 4 times. She ground the gears twice. Charles didn't care. He just kept encouraging her, kept coaching her, kept being patient. Finally, Jennifer got it. The engine purred. The gears shifted smoothly, and she drove the Mustang around the garage parking lot with Charles in the passenger seat and the biggest smile on her face. This is incredible. Jennifer shouted over the engine noise. You're incredible. Charles shouted back. They drove around for another 30 minutes before parking back in the garage. When Jennifer turned off the engine, she sat in the driver's seat with both hands on the steering wheel, breathing hard, grinning like a kid. "Thank you," she said. "For this, for the letter, for everything." "Thank you," Charles said, "for taking a chance on a grease-covered mechanic who was just as lost as you were." "We're not lost anymore," Jennifer said. "No," Charles agreed. "We're not." That evening, when Mia came home, she found Charles and Jennifer in the kitchen making dinner together. The Mustang was parked in the garage with a big red bow on the hood that Charles had secretly bought. "Whose car is that?" Mia asked immediately. "Mine," Jennifer said, still smiling. "Your dad restored it for me." "Cool," Mia said. Then, with the casual wisdom of a 10-year-old, she added, "So does this mean you're going to stick around?" Jennifer looked at Charles, then back at Mia. "Yeah," she said, "I'm going to stick around." "Good," Mia said matter-of-factly, "because you're way better at helping with my homework than Dad is." "Hey!" Charles protested, but he was laughing. They ate dinner together that night, the three of them at the small kitchen table, talking about cars and school and what movie they should watch later. It was ordinary and imperfect, and exactly what all of them needed. Later, after Mia was asleep, Charles and Jennifer sat on the garage roof watching the stars. Jennifer had her head on Charles's shoulder, and Charles had his arm around her waist. "Can I tell you something?" Jennifer said, "Always. When I wrote that letter 6 years ago, I never thought anyone would read it. I never thought anyone would understand. But you did. You read it, and you saw me, really saw me, and you didn't run away." "Why would I run away?" Charles asked. "Because I'm a mess," Jennifer said. "I work too much. I'm terrible at relationships. I don't know how to turn off my brain and just be present sometimes." "Jennifer," Charles said, turning to look at her, "you think I'm not a mess? I've got a failing business, a dead wife I'm still grieving, and a 10-year-old daughter who's the only thing keeping me functional most days. We're both disasters. But maybe that's okay. Maybe we don't need to be perfect. Maybe we just need to be honest and show up and love each other through the mess." Jennifer kissed him. "I can do that." "Me too," Charles said. They sat on the roof until midnight, holding each other under the stars, two broken people who had found a way to be whole together. The garage below them was quiet. The Mustang waited in the darkness, ready for all the adventures still to come. And somewhere in the glove box of that Mustang, folded carefully, was Charles's letter, a permanent reminder that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is tell someone you love them and hope they love you back. This story teaches us that vulnerability and honesty are the foundations of genuine human connection, and that healing from loneliness requires the courage to be seen for who we truly are, not just what we do. Charles and Jennifer both lived behind protective walls. He buried his need for companionship in single fatherhood. She hid her humanity behind professional excellence, until an accidentally discovered letter forced them to confront their shared isolation. The lesson is profound. We cannot fix our deepest problems with the same self-protective strategies that created them. Instead of trying to be perfect or invulnerable, we must risk being honest about our fears and needs, allow others into our messy, imperfect lives, and understand that real love isn't about finding someone flawless. It's about finding someone willing to show up, try, and be patient through the complicated reality of two broken people learning to be whole together. The story reminds us that the bravest thing we can do is admit we need connection, reach out when we're struggling, and give others permission to do the same. So here's the real question. Did you subscribe yet? Thousands of people will listen to this story and won't subscribe. Please don't be that person. Kindly support what I do here by subscribing. And then drop in the comment section if you'd like part 2.